Yep, I think we're live. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in on this Monday. To everyone tuning in for this event. Today is a very exciting day for all of us at Aviyel as we kickstart our very first event in our Women in Open Source series. With me today, we have Anita Ihuman, who is a community manager for the Layer5 community. Anita has had a very interesting journey into tech and open source, and I can't wait to catch up with her. But before we deep dive into Anita's journey, I would like to give all of you folks here a quick introduction into why we launched this series and why it's particularly relevant today. So, as all of you may already know, Aviyel is on a mission to build a sustainable and inclusive open source community. However, in our journey and conversations with contributors around the world, we've realized that less than 4% of all contributors do not identify as men. So, in this series, um, we are taking a first step in changing that, and we want to show young women out there that open source is for each one of them as well. So, with Women in Open Source, we feature women who have breaking all these barriers to become champions of the open source community. And we look forward to hosting many more distinguished individuals from different walks of life who are working to bring a change to the OSS community through their collective efforts. So today with us, we have Anita Ihuman, who has had quite an interesting entry into tech from a completely non-technical background and later into open source. Anita, would you like to tell us here, the audience, a little bit more about your entry into tech and now into open source communities and how that's come about?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Charu. This is actually a very, very lovely platform. I mean, I was going through the interface and I'm seeing the emojis. I'm a fan of emojis a lot. Yeah, this is awesome. So, a little bit about me. I'm Anita Ihuman, and I got into tech in the year 2020 as a result of the pandemic. I mean, I always had intentions of it, but then the pandemic was like a good push for me because I wasn't doing any other thing with my time other than sit at home. So I started as a front-end developer. And along the way, I got to hear about open source through an event in Africa called OSCA, Open Source Community Africa. And I was like, okay, I love this. I mean, I saw that people were going to Lagos, that's for the conference, and I was really intrigued. Although I wasn't able to go, I watched the videos virtually, and I was really, really excited. Then a few months after, I saw a hackathon from She Code Africa. It's a platform for women that want to get into tech within the African ecosystem. So they were having this hackathon for contributors in open source, and I came across Layer5. That was when I made my first contributions, like code-based to open source. And I've been engaging with open source communities, but I had no idea what it was all about. I was just engaging based on, yeah, people are doing it, so let me just do it. But then getting into Layer5, I think they broke down concepts of open source and how to contribute and all of that. So I was like, oh, it's actually more exciting than I thought, because imagine not having an idea of something but you're trying to contribute. It was really, really crazy for me. And that's how I got into open source contributions with Layer5, and the journey just started from there.
The ride that you have had into open source. But so once you joined these communities, I know you didn't have the best experience when you started out. Would you like to tell the audience, a little bit more about, what was your experience when you first contributed? And, instead of many others who may have been dejected by that first negative experience, you got back into open source and, you decided to make a change in the community. Would you like to tell the audience?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, like I said, my first code contributions were in Layer5, but I was already engaging in open source communities like Gnome Foundation. And when I got in, that was the one that actually got me discouraged, because Gnome is a really big foundation and there's so many things happening at the same time. So at every interval we had meetings, I always get really scared to join or to even make any contribution. So I just sit in the meetings and be quiet. I was a member of the diversity and inclusion group, so I just keep quiet and pay attention to the meetings and all. But then getting into Layer5, I got an issue to contribute. Believe me, it was a really, really simple issue. But the problem was that I didn't understand how to go about it. So I had to like go through one particular pull request for over a week, correcting and going over the same mistakes over and over again. It was really, really challenging for me. I almost like lost the interest and the vibes to contribute, but the maintainers were really, really helpful. The maintainers were there to, walk me through at every interval. So I made it through the first pull request. I was so happy because that was something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And I started up with the community, and that was just about it.
That great. I'm sure, the first contribution must have been very, joyous to, have.
I posted it on all platforms.
That's amazing. So, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So, now that, we've set a little bit more context to your journey, would you like to tell us more about how you've been building diversity into the open source communities that you've been part of, and why it's particularly important right now?
Oh yeah, sure. So like I said earlier, I started with GNOME, but I was a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Community Working Group, and I had very little idea about what was going on, but I liked what they were discussing, so I just kept on attending. And although I could relate to some of the topics that were brought up based on diversity and inclusion because I was going through the same challenge, I couldn't air my opinion about it. And then getting into layer 5, I got an opportunity to actually do that with the community because everyone is so welcoming. And I was like, okay, maybe I could get in line with this. And then I realized that there's so many persons that went through the same issues with me. They were trying to contribute and were having challenges. And I picked up myself and a friend, Ruti Kega. We developed a newcomers call just to get persons onboarded into the community. And from there, I just got the interest to speak more on diversity and inclusion in open source, read more about it, and engage more in diversity and inclusion communities because I realized that this is an aspect that a lot of persons talk about in open source, but when it comes to practicalizing it, there's not much effort put inside bringing this diversity and inclusion to action. And so I just had to do more than just speak. If I get into a community, I try to point out areas that could be made more inclusive for other persons to contribute, either in the newcomers aspect or the documentation and all of that. I just making my contributions to those areas like that because I know that the same challenges that I went through, so many persons are actually going through it and cannot air their opinions, just like I couldn't do mine then.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like most people, if they had an issue, I think if I don't know if I would have had the courage to do that. If I had an issue, I might just leave the project, switch to a different project, probably leave the community itself. But that's really powerful that you went back into that community itself and you decided I want to make a change here. That's really impressive, really. So Anita, I really want to know, so you said that implementing these things in real life is is a practical challenge indeed, even though like a lot of communities have codes of conduct and other documents as well that try to build inclusivity and diversity into their communities. But how practical is it, and how can we actually implement these documents in place is my next question for you.
Okay, well, if you notice, a lot of persons speak about diversity and inclusion, write about diversity and inclusion, but when it comes to actively practicing this in the communities, there's very little efforts made towards that. When we want to build a diverse inclusion, the first place is to make the first impression that yes, if I'm walking into this community, I just get the sense that yes, it's an inclusive one. It's like walking into a high school for the first time as someone gets into high school and the gates person bounces you back because of your outfit. And that's your first day going to high school and you get this kind of experience. I'm not sure you feel comfortable with the gatesman afterwards or the persons in the school afterwards from that day on. And that's the same thing that happens in open source. If you walk into a community and from the first impression, you don't feel you don't feel the diversity and inclusion, either the way they welcome you or the way they talk to you or interact with you when you're trying to collaborate, you will most likely feel discouraged to continue your journey afterwards. And the best way to do this is by implementing it in the onboarding steps. Personally, I would think draw the diversity back to the onboarding steps, not only leaving it in the documentation, but then make the entire community aware of it. So if I'm walking into the gate, I'm going to be told that, yes, this community has this particular rules. We have code of conduct to look at, but we try as much as possible to welcome persons from different diverse backgrounds and all of that. So pointing out areas like this would really be helpful to some persons just to get their mind on it. And also, while they contribute, there should be other areas like when creating a pull request, there should be pointers that say, in order to achieve an inclusive contribution, would appreciate if you make certain efforts or you make certain impact towards your pull request. Yeah, like hinting it on different aspects of the community. We keep reminding persons that we're not only leaving it in the documentation for you to read once in a year or once in a blue moon, but at every interval you walk through this community, you're going to be seeing these signs on every angle that says we are diverse and we don't agree with these particular conditions, or we're not okay with this particular condition.
Yeah, that's particularly interesting. I guess, if, that's built in from the very first step that someone takes into the community, that can really make a difference in their journey and the community as well. That really makes sense. I was just wondering, so I'm sure, in your journey as a community manager, you may have encountered people who may feel not actually accept many things in the code of conduct, or may contest it and may not follow it. So how do you actually implement it and make sure that someone follows these structures in place?
Okay, well, the code of conduct is there for people to refer to at any point in time. But in a community where you're trying to build this, implement this code of conduct, and there's just one person or two who are not going in line with this, I always go with approaching them first, like privately. It would be a good start, approaching them personally and saying, I don't know if you came across our code of conduct, but this particular action that you did is not in line with our code of conduct. So in case of next time, please don't repeat this again. Now, the person, whoever the person is, will be aware that, yes, this particular thing I did was not right. And if he comes across another community member that does the same thing, because you've already given him like a one-on-one conversation against that particular thing, you most likely transfer the same information you gave him to the next person, and it goes onwards just like that. But like reaching out to this person's one-on-one in a situation where they default this code of conduct is actually a good place to start.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Finally, many of you folks here may not know, but Anita is actually a reviewer as a part of Chaos's Inclusivity and Diversity for Events Badging Committee. So, Anita, could you tell us a little bit more about what Chaos does, and what a lot of us who organize events and conferences can even do to make our events and our events in our platform more inclusive and diverse?
Okay, sure. So the Chaos community generally is built by Linus Foundation, and is focused on analyzing the metrics within community and building a healthy open source community. And under Chaos, we have a working group called Diversity and Inclusion Badging Program. So this badging initiative is focused on issuing badges to events organizers, to open source maintainers, or even persons in open source. But at the moment, we're only focused on event organizers, just to issue our badges to events and all. So we calculate and measure, we track the metrics for these events. And there are actually a list of metrics that we track, either on how accessible the documents are, how diverse and welcoming the event is, how they accommodate and take care of the speakers and the attendees' welfare and all of that. So all of these metrics are listed out, and even how the website for that particular event looks like. all of these events, these metrics are listed out. So when you apply as an event organizer for your event to be reviewed, we check it in accordance with the metrics that we have already set out. And if it meets a particular standard, you're issued either a gold badge, a silver badge, or what's the other badge? Well, people barely get that last badge. So yes, but yeah, we issue a lot of badges out.
That's pretty cool. Are these badges for only offline events, or are they applicable for online events as well?
Yeah, they're actually for online and offline events. Because when we talk about welfare, we're talking about the welfare of persons when they get to that event center. So yeah, we take care of the offline events as well.
That's amazing. Anita, finally, I know that you got into open source through She Code Africa and Open Source Africa and a bunch of communities. So, how do you think these communities have really played a role into getting more folks like you from different ethnicities than that are traditionally seen, and more women into open source? So, what do you think? Do you think the way to get more women and people of different ethnicities into open source is actually through such community efforts?
Well, yeah, the idea or the power behind open source is a community. And these particular communities that I am very familiar with have helped thousands of persons within the African ecosystem. And I know other communities outside that are not just centered to Africa alone that take on movements like this just to get persons into open source. And it's really, really amazing because a lot of persons, if you're saying 100% sign up for these communities, then 50% of persons actually get into open source and make a great deal in open source contributions. You see, so like in as much as a lot of persons to say, yeah, they're just one of those communities, we have like thousands of them. But no, if it's just one of those communities, imagine that 50 persons out of 100 persons from that community are actually actively participating in open source as a result of the impact they got from engaging in that particular community.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I from many of the women from the African subcontinent that I've spoken to, I've really realized that She Code Africa has really played a role in getting so many of them interested into open source, and that's such a wonderful community event that that they've been building over there. We would definitely want to collaborate on something with them soon in the future. So finally, Anita, what do you think as individuals, who are currently involved in some degree in open source and, at some point of privilege, what can we do to, build inclusivity and diversity on a personal level into the communities that we're already part of? And do you see this personal level of change happening before your eyes in the communities that you've been part of? Are more women and people of color and people from non-white ethnicities actually coming into open source currently? What are your thoughts?
Well, from communities I've been actively participating in, I've noticed a change, a lot of change. I know when I got into Layer 5 earlier, there were like very few ladies actively contributing, but like recently you notice that so many persons are interested in contributing, which means yes, the guidelines that we've put together are helping persons. So as individuals that are in a situation or in a privileged standpoint, the best way to actually address this is to take it upon yourself to do it. I noticed something whenever it comes to community work and helping other persons, every single person feels like someone will do it. Don't worry. Even if I don't do it, someone will do it. But what if that someone never does it? So why don't you just make this first step? If you're talking about achieving a more inclusive environment, take it upon yourself to work towards that, and other persons will follow suit. You get. And if you're talking about making contributors feel welcomed and in that particular community, you can just take the first step to going about that. I know one other thing that I learned from this is when you walk into a community for the first time, you notice that nobody says hello or nobody welcomes you to that particular community. As a newbie, this is heartbreaking on all levels because you join the community with so much anticipation and no one seems to notice your presence in the community. It's really heartbreaking for most contributors, and they just most persons feel discouraged from contributing onwards. But imagine you just single-handedly choose to welcome every person that comes into the community and just say, hello, it's good to have you here. Just that simple line is going to make the person feel welcome enough to continue contributing. It even motivate the person to, just bring more ideas to improve that community, and you wouldn't even realize it. So like just the little effort from one person that is aware is enough to actually change the entire community.
That really makes a difference. I think, and something as small as saying, welcome to the community, we're glad to have you here, is even though it might seem small, I've never realized how powerful that could be till you actually pointed that out. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for all of us who tuned in today as we come to the end of this session. I'm so glad to have had, I know it was a quick conversation, it was a quick rapid fire chat over here, but I'm sure that all of us, including myself, garnered a lot of value from this conversation. Thank you so much, Anita, for chipping in on this Monday afternoon for you. Thank you so much, and I'm sure everyone who tuned in as well gained a lot of value from this session. I think we can, if you would like to add anything more, I think we can close the event for now.
Okay, well, I'd just like to give a quick instance. So if you're here and you're like, you have an open source community and you're wondering why contributors come into your community, don't say hello, never contribute, and your numbers keep rising, but the contributors are not active, it's probably because they walked in and they didn't feel like anyone noticed their presence, so they got discouraged. Because I know I've done that a lot of times. I joined an open source community this afternoon, and the first message I got was from the CEO. I know it's an automated message, but then it says, hello, Anita, welcome to this community. We're really happy to have you. If you need any assistance, you can reach out to me directly or see the resources here. Like, it's just that simple. And I was like, oh, this is really awesome. I mean, I know it's automated, but it makes me feel like they actually care about the persons coming into the community. That's why they did something like that. And I know it will make a lot of impact on other persons' lives coming into that particular community. So like a little effort as that would go a long way into retaining persons that are coming into your community. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Those small things are actually the ones that actually make a difference and actually make people feel welcome within those communities. So yeah, thank you for those words.
Yeah.
With that, we come to the end of this event. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Thank you so much, Anita, for taking your time out for this. I think we can close the event then. Bye, folks.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.